So, can I ask you a question? Sure. All right. See, you could have just said no. I don't know. We could have then we would have had the benediction and send everybody home, right? But I took a risk, and so here's the question. Does your church ask enough of you? Does your church ask enough of you? We come to church week in, week out. Many of us faithfully come every week, or at least as often as our schedules will allow. We're grateful for the opportunity to grow in faith and to share our faith by attending worship in a country that allows us to practice our faith freely. And we come for worship, and we do that often enough so that we gain within our own being a spirit energy that strengthens us so that we can make it through at least until the next time that we gather together. But there's a cumulative effect, and we fill up that spiritual tank, and it starts to build something that we can travel on and keep on going. And we live our lives one day at a time. The things that we've learned about in the past begin to influence and shape our present and our future. And as that happens, we begin to really live out our faith in a positive way. We are living our faith boldly and passionately and faithfully, living into what it is that we say that we believe. What is it that we say we believe? Every Sunday when we share the creed, whichever one we use, the Apostles' Creed right now, I believe. We say what we believe, but you know what? You say what you believe every day of the week, even if you don't recite the creed one more time. You say it by how you interact with other people. You say it by how you have patience with them or how you help people along. Even little Peter down here, right? You know, when we take the time to unwrap the things that are holding our friends and our neighbors back, and we take the time to invest ourselves in them, we're living our creed. We are empowered by God. So I'm asking you a question, but I want to make sure that you understand what the question is not. I'm not asking if you are doing enough, if the church is asking you to do enough so that you can use what you do as brownie points to get closer to God. Max shared a story with me as we met together this week about a man who was recounting all of his good works that he had done in life as he died, and he was standing at the gates and meeting there with St. Peter. And St. Peter told him, well, I'm glad you're here. We work on a point system. 1,000 points gets you in. So let's hear your story. So the man began to tell his story. He says, well, I went to church every Sunday that I could. And Peter says, oh, okay. He says, I'll give you 6 points for that. 6 points. Oh, and I was faithful to my spouse through our whole married life. Another 3 points for that. Man started to look a little nervous. He says, well, I read the whole Bible through, cover to cover, Genesis to Revelation, 5 times. And Peter says, wow, I'm pretty impressed. So we'll give you 1 point for each time, so that's 5 more points. The man says, well, I raised 3 kids to be God-fearing, good Christians. Says Peter, 3 more points. The man's beginning to sweat a little bit. He's already given all his really big life achievements as an accounting, and he's trying to get to 1,000, but when he adds it up, all he's got so far is 17 points. And so he's in desperation. How will I make it to 1,000? And he throws up his hands and he says, at this rate, it will only be by the grace of God that I get in. And Peter says, yep, that's it. And Mac pointed out to me that if you're Baptist, that last answer counts for 883 points. See, that's the difference between us and being Lutheran, because for Lutherans, that answer counts for 1,000 points. It's everything. You're in already. There's no works that you need to do. You've already got your 1,000 points because all of that came from Jesus by God's grace alone. Nothing else. So when I ask, is your church asking enough of you? It's not about getting in to heaven. Jesus took care of that. Not 1,000 points, but 100%. It's done. But for what? Did you get the points just so that you could make it to church every Sunday? I don't think so. And so I wanted to look at today's two of today's lessons that we read, and make brief observations. The lessons were long enough, so the observations, we'll try to keep them brief.
Amen.
Let's start with Ezekiel. I got a chaplain with an amen for it. Ezekiel, one of my favorite passages, the valley of the dry bones. God can do anything and everything. Are we agreed on that? Yes. But yet God sends a messenger to Ezekiel. God comes and speaks and asks Ezekiel if these dry bones can live. Now you and I and Ezekiel know the answer to that. Not like that they can't. But Ezekiel has the insight to respond to that question by saying, "Oh Lord, you know." And notice the reply that he gets. This messenger, God's angel, speaks to Ezekiel and says, "Now prophesy to the bones." God is asking him to do something, not for his own salvation. He's asking him to do something for these dry bones. We don't hear the words that Ezekiel speaks, but we hear God tells him, say these words, and Ezekiel says the words, and when Ezekiel says the words that God spoke to him, something begins to happen. All of a sudden it says he hears a rattling sound. Bones clicking and coming together. And he looked back and he saw sinews, and then flesh, and then skin covering the flesh, just by the words that he spoke, just by what little he was asked to do. He said it, he did it, and it started to happen. And so there it was, a vast, great army. But guess what? They were still dead. And so the voice, the messenger, the Lord speaks to Ezekiel a second time. Now prophesy to the breath. Speak to these bones. Speak to these bodies. And come and speak now to the Spirit. And when he speaks to the Spirit, that whole army receives God's Spirit, and they rise up again. God uses a relationship that he already has with Ezekiel, a relationship of trust and of faith, to make this happen and to bring this whole community. It says they had died, what? Because they had lost any sense of hope. Did you know that that can kill you? Not having a sense of hope, not having something to look forward, look to, look beyond, that can leave you dead in your spirits. And so we see that when Ezekiel says and does just what little he was asked to do, that we have the making of a miracle. Moving on to Jesus and the gospel. Jesus apparently knew all along what was going to happen. We could analyze why was it that he stayed an extra 2 days when the message came to him. Somebody must have texted him and said, "There's a problem here. We need you to come." He stayed an extra 2 days. And in that time, we're not told what it is that he was doing. We're not told what was happening to Lazarus, but Jesus knew. It says there that he knows. And then when he finally gets on the road and travels to Bethany, everyone says to him the same thing when he gets there. "Well, look who's here, huh? You finally made it, Jesus. But you're late. You're too late." He shares a conversation with Martha. He asks her about what she believes, and she replies about the resurrection, which is to come, she says, at the end of time. Oh, her pastor in her confirmation class would be so proud of her. Huh? She just got it exactly theologically correct. And yet, what does Jesus say to her? I'm not talking about the end of time. He says, I, the one who am speaking to you, I am the way and the life. I am the resurrection. Do you believe this? He gets Martha around to believing. And just when he does that, and she goes back and sends her sister Mary out. You remember Martha and Mary, right? And he sends Mary out with a whole entourage of those who are surrounding her. They're surrounding her, but not helping her understand the resurrection. They're helping her mourn her loss of life because her brother has died. And in the Message version that I read to you this morning, it doesn't just say that Jesus was passionate. It says that he was filled with rage, with anger. We're not used to that, right? We still remember Jesus, gentle Jesus, meek and mild. Jesus filled with anger, it says. I think what he gets angry about is that the community that should be pointing her towards the resurrection is just trying to help her get through what she's going through. That's not a bad thing. But Jesus is trying to say, if you speak the creed, if you say what you believe, then please act like you believe what you say you believe. He sees that people are not living out the beauty and strength of the faith that they already have claimed as theirs. And he wants them to be able to see it, so he goes forth, tells them, move the stone, never mind the stench, and shouts, Lazarus, come out. And Lazarus comes out. Just like Peter this morning, huh? Except that was cute. Comes out, it says, like a cadaver, wrapped up in cloths, bound and unable. How he was even able to get up and walk or stumble to the cave entrance, I don't even know. But look here yet again. God spoke the word to Ezekiel. Ezekiel spoke it, and it happened. Jesus speaks the word to Lazarus, and Lazarus comes forth, but he still needs the community to come together. And so Jesus says one more thing, but he's not talking to Lazarus this time. He's talking to all of those who are gathered around together, and he says to them, unbind him. Untie him. He uses the community to bring life. He uses us, people of God, people of living faith. God uses us to bring that gift of life which comes from Jesus to our friends, to our neighbors, to our co-workers, to our families, and to restore a sense of community and fill us and empower us with kingdom values. And when the community acts in that way, there also is the making of a miracle. You see, even on that day when Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, there was a truth about that moment. Lazarus was going to die again. But the community that Jesus empowered lives on. Lived on through that moment and lives on to this day. If it didn't, you and I, we would not be sitting here, gathered together, empowered by the Spirit of God. So I ask you this morning, has the church asked enough of us? Have we encouraged each other to dream God's dreams and to live into God's plans in little ways and big ways? God is inviting us to make a difference in this world, right here, right now. God, in other words, is beckoning us to claim Christ's resurrection power in our lives now by participating in and completing the fantastic work that God has already begun. And sometimes all the church does, and I didn't pay Nancy this morning to say it, but sometimes all we do, we need it, we ask for what? Ushers and greeters and someone to set up the chairs. We need all that. Don't get me wrong. But if all that you have received God's life-giving power and salvation for is to do a few things in the church for Sunday morning, and it leaves us woefully lacking and to be pitied. So if the church doesn't ask you enough, then how will you know? Friends, in a moment, you maybe felt that your bulletin that you received today was awfully thick, because there was a lot of things in there. But in a moment, we are going to pray for Together in Mission, which is a Florida Bahamas Synod initiative to bring congregations and Christians throughout this synod together and working together in new ways. And today has been designated as Together in Mission Sunday in our synod. So you can read the insert that you see there. We are going to pray in just a moment together. We are going to pray that God uses us, empowers us, strengthens us, moves us, compels us, inspires us, unites us, and increases our faith. I'm telling you now what we're going to pray for, because some people might be saying, I don't know if I want to pray all that just right now. But if you want to pray that and see God's power move, as Don was sharing a little moment ago about this past Monday when we had our meeting with Pastor Duran and Pastor Dubon, and we had an experience together. Pastor Duran, who is responsible for new congregation starts, and he said, you know what, we still see Living Faith that way because you never got to the point of having your own building, even though you've been around for a while. And he was excited about the spirit and the energy that the council was sharing with him and with Pastor Dubon. Pastor Dubon, who is the director of evangelical mission for our area and the assistant to Bishop Schaefer for South Florida. We shared our story, and we shared it with enthusiasm, and they shared with us, well, we have some things to share with you as well. We want to share resources. We want to share training. We want to share networks of Christians throughout this state. We want to encourage you to dream a dream. Not just about building a building or having a building. We want you to dream about what your mission and ministry is going to be in this area and continue to see how it will grow. And there was an excitement as we gathered together. And when we left, Don said, you've been to a lot of meetings. And that was probably one of the best meetings with the Synod, he said, that he's ever had. And I think we would all agree. There was something happening in our midst. And let me tell you, friends, if that happens in our congregation, we won't need to ask if the church is asking you to do enough. If that happens and we start moving, then setting up the chairs will seem like small stuff, because it won't be all of that what we need to do. It will empower us to become the community of God's people. I encourage you, as this Lenten journey begins to come to a close. This week coming is the week before Holy Week. Next Sunday, Palm Sunday, and the Sunday of the Passion, we begin Holy Week. And I want to invite you and encourage you, take some time during this week, maybe each day, maybe in the morning, maybe in the evening, you know when is best for you. Take some time and think about the week that is before you. The things that you know that are on your calendar, on your agenda, things that you need to accomplish. But look also and see where in that is the place for your dreams. Where is the place for the opportunities that will present themselves to you as you go about this week? We can't plan or predict what it's going to be like. We don't know what things await us, good or bad. But we can look at the dreams that God has placed within us, or that need to be rekindled and become all of that, and move forward. Maybe it's making a difference in somebody else's life that you see every week or every day, and you say, I just need to do something for that person. It could be as small as that. But you know what? Sometimes those little small first steps become something greater and become something bigger. And who knows what it might look like down the road. And I want to invite you, share some of that on Facebook. Share some of that with me in an email if you want. We'll pray together. We'll strengthen each other together. We'll walk together. We'll move together. We'll pray together. and will hear Jesus calling our name and saying, "Go," because it has the making of a miracle. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.